This is Matt Carty here in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. This isn't the RTE news. So listen, thanks very much everybody for watching. If you are watching, make sure you hit like and share, because we want to make sure that we get this out to as many people as possible, because this is our effort to try and keep people at home informed of the work that we as a Sinn Féin team here in the European Parliament are doing, and also let people know about some of the issues that are happening here in the Parliament, and also try and touch on maybe some of the political topics that are happening in Ireland when we have time. So listen, as I say, please hit share, because we want to disseminate this as wide as possible. And don't forget, if you share, you are in with a chance to win one of our special GUI NGL Towards a United Ireland mugs. They're actually very sought after. And if your name has been called out and you haven't received your mug as yet, give us contact us, email us or something, so that we can make sure. So this is our 7th show, and the people said we wouldn't last. Do you remember that? The cynics and the skeptics. Well, here we are, show number 7, and we have a very diverse, politically speaking, panel tonight, because we have from Dublin our famous MEP Lynn Boylan, from County Down, who were knocked out of the championship last year by the Farney boys, Monaghan. Dáire Hughes, who's the Sinn Féin political manager here in the European Parliament. And if that sounds like a very highfalutin job, we'll talk to Dáire later on. And then Waterford's finest, Michael Doyle, who works in Leonie Riada's office, concentrating on issues like budget and other things. And we're going to have some serious words with Michael as the show goes off. So don't forget, I think we have the settings here that I can see some of your seven comments already. So I'm sure they're all very...
it's probably John Darcy looking for his mug. Yeah. So John, I'm going to take this one for you.
Some people telling me already that they're sharing it, and we have some other issues. Someone's asking already if we can have any thoughts on the Kerry babies scandal, which is just that, an absolute scandal even all these years later, and we will try and touch on that. How are you, Lynn?
I'm good.
How are you enjoying Strasbourg?
I love Strasbourg. I love this place.
First one of 2018.
And
let Do we say 2018 or 2018?
2018.
What are you?
2018.
Shorten it down, 2018.
Okay, right. So it's officially 2018 for all those who were wondering. So we had over here in Strasbourg this week, today especially, about Leo Varadkar and his €5 million communications unit. Did he say anything interesting then?
You'd probably ask EPP now and they'd say yes, he did. No, look, he said some things that were really important, reminding about the North and protecting it and a special arrangement for it. So he ticked a lot of boxes, but I suppose what he did say that was of huge concern was stuff for, like, clearly showing he has this federalist ideology, which is no surprise to us in Sinn Féin, but the idea of European-wide lists
for the MEP elections.
For the MEP elections, he's missed an opportunity there. He's talking about Brexit, he's talking about the North being protected, and you have a situation where he could be making the case in the European Parliament that Ireland should get extra seats in the next election, so that you could have a list that would allow for the North to be represented. And instead, he's decided to go down a federal road where the person, as he's put it, in Naples will be voting for the same person as the person in the cafe in Cork. And I know personally, I'm in Dublin, yourself and Leo
That's crazy. It's nuts.
And Martina will all talk about how difficult it is for you to get around your constituency, but I find it difficult enough to engage with the people I represent in Dublin because of the size of the constituency, to think that you're going to, you'd have a list and that person would be able to represent people in countries of 27 different member states. It's ridiculous.
I was seeing you were wearing an I Love Leo t-shirt earlier on. I Love Leo t-shirt earlier on, Dáire. Seriously, was there anything that he said that was of substance? I thought it was more rhetoric, to be honest.
Yeah, apart from the Brexit stuff, which we've known has been constructive thus far, it was pretty much fluff and contradiction. He spoke about direct democracy and bringing democracy right to people, to every single citizen in Europe, and then said he supported the notion of these pan-European lists, which is the complete opposite, which is taking your representative away from the person. But the one thing that was interesting was a significant softening of his stance on Catalonia, when he said that, in the past it's an internal matter for the Spanish state. What he said today was that the Madrid government needs to open dialogue with the incoming Catalan government which I think was a softening of his stance and probably didn't play too well in Madrid.
Yeah, but it's probably because pressure works. When
Yeah,
you're,
absolutely.
he was completely out of kilter with the Irish people on all of this. Going back to not only the list, but in terms of what he was saying, because most of it was absolute waffle in terms of, now he's a smooth operator. Nobody can deny that he can present himself. What he said was well delivered. It was very well received. I thought that he was targeting, and he said what the French and German MEPs wanted to hear as opposed to what the Irish people needed him to say. And in that case it was worrying, because basically he was here to lead a debate about the future of Europe, and he completely missed the ball.
No, I agree. But he's indicative of the EPP group and indicative of that mindset around federalism, that despite the fact that all of the signs are showing that citizens want a greater connection with political institutions, that they want, to feel that their vote matters. He's pushing this pan-European federalist model, which is not what citizens want. So look, it didn't surprise me, but I think, he's definitely out of kilter with what the Irish people want, and certainly with what I think citizens across Europe want.
I want to come back to Leo in a minute. Michael, you work in Leo Varadkar's office. How committed are you to that particular job? Considering Leo does a very important job. She's here as a representative of the people of Ireland South. A big challenge to hold on to that seat, because you're going to have the establishment out in force. You have obviously an important role to make sure that doesn't happen.
I do.
What's your plans in the next year or so?
My plans are to start this campaign very early on domestic shores for Leo. So
you're fecking off out of the European Parliament.
With that on board, what I intend doing is, I got the budget 2017 over the line. And before I reached
the European Union budget
over the line, so done everything that
so
needs
you're
to be
responsible
done
for all this additional money that's going into PESCO.
So I'm going back onto the domestic shores, as I said, of the island of Ireland, and particularly Ireland South, to get Leah's campaign going and make sure she's returned.
You're going to work in Leinster House.
And then you're coming back with her.
With an Ulster TV.
I'm always mindful, because I'm not suggesting that any of our people in Leinster House is quite the opposite, in fact, but I did think one of the statements that one of the abstentionists during the 86 debate said, he said, going into Leinster House is like a banana. You start off green, you turn yellow, you end up rotten.
You mentioned a lot of colours, so what colour do you turn over here?
Well, here I think, quite clearly, everybody here has remained staunch, remained true. We were given a job of work to do.
But I do see colours changing, that's the problem.
We're all wearing a shade of blue, which isn't
so, honestly, you're going to work in Cuivan O'Callaghan's office.
I'm going to work.
Now, I want to just give you a little bit of a geography lesson. Cuivan O'Callaghan is about as far away from Ireland South as you could possibly get.
Correct.
He's from the great constituency, the fantastic constituency of Cavan and Monaghan, which includes obviously the county of Monaghan, which quite likely to be All-Ireland champions in the coming year. So someone who's used to wearing the blue and white, are you going to at least learn a bit of football while you're in an office of a Monaghan man?
No, given the year we had in 2017, and I did meet you in Croke Park, I might add you were wearing the maroon and white.
I was cheering on the tribesmen up Galway.
No, we'll stick to a small ball game. That's what we'll do.
So listen, in terms of Leo coming over, you're going into Leinster House, so you're going to be working with a team who are going to be fit. We only had to face them once so far. These guys have to face them every day in the Dáile. What's your advice going to be in terms of somebody who's been in Europe now for a year? You're going to be talking to our TDs. A big part of the work that we're involved in is making sure that the work that we do here translates there and vice versa. So what are you going to be saying about your experience in the European Parliament and how it can improve the work that we do in the Dáile?
I suppose, given the broad range of issues that come up in Europe, we need to be selective both here and at home to make those relevant to the issues that matter to the people that send Lee, yourself, Martina and Lynn out.
So I'm right here.
If we're talking about Leo being over here today and the future of Europe and all this kind of, I'll carry on. The future of Europe is the people, not the way it's being operated at the minute.
Yeah.
So it needs a sea change. And if you're listening to Leo today, he was trying to play to every gallery. So there were a number of hypocrisies. If you're talking about neutrality on one hand and PESCO and the military union on
We're
the
going to
other
come to that in a few minutes. How long are we for time, actually?
You're grand, yeah.
10 minutes. Okay, so we've another 20 minutes. So listen, Leo Varadkar, what do you think it will do in terms of shaping debate? Because we've seen the Commission, now Helen McEntee, the European movement and others rolling out this debate on the future of Europe. My view is that this is all a smokescreen, because they haven't, of all the debates, they haven't had a single critical voice in terms of being one of the keynote speakers. We've a situation whereby this is a guise to move towards, as I said in response to Leo's speech today, doing what EU leaders always intended to do, only doing it faster with less democratic accountability. We've been obviously caught up in the whole Brexit debate because it's so important for Ireland. We need to get engaged in the future of Europe debate as well.
And I think the future of Europe debate in Ireland, and you're right, we have a role to play in trying to publicise that and get people active in it. But the type of the future of Europe debate that Fine Gael are rolling out is exactly a carbon copy of what you see in Brussels around the future of Europe. It's the same elite people who are talking to themselves in the room about how do we progress our federalist project, how do we fast track this idea that we want this United States of Europe. Like, we didn't hear anything radical from Leo today. There was no big idea. As far as he was concerned, this biggest idea was this pan-European electoral system, given that Ireland...
And it's not a new idea. They've been talking about that for 20 years.
Exactly.
So just using the opportunities that have presented
And they know very well that by doing that, what you do is you reduce the chances of people who are critical, people who are on the left, from getting elected. And all you'll see is an enlarged EPP type group in the European Parliament. That's what they want. So,
but isn't it bizarre, Dáire, because a lot of people, when we talk about, we learning the lessons, the financial crisis hit, European institutions used it to actually push ahead with financial measures that they always wanted to do anyway, nothing to do with responding to the very serious concerns. Brexit has come about, and rather than actually listen to the message, because there was a message in between all the xenophobia and the negatives of Brexit, there was a cohort of people, even in England, who voted to leave because they felt that the EU had lost its way. They've received democratic messages from Ireland on the Lisbon Treaty, from the French and the Dutch on the Constitution, from the Greeks on the Ockley referendum.
And even on the citizens' initiatives, this big idea, this play that citizens will now be able to have their say. Well, all the Commission does is go, thanks for signing your name there. We'll put that on the shelf and let it gather dust. So,
Dáire, your job is to tell us what to do and to oversee the political project here. Are we connecting? Are we getting the balance right between engaging with this place in a constructive way, having a critical analysis, and then presenting that analysis back home as well as here?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the large part we are using this as an institution to put forward what needs to be done for Ireland. And in relation to the Brexit debate and in the context of what you just said about the EU not learning its lessons, it's very clear that there was a nasty xenophobic right-wing element that drove Brexit.
Can I just say we have a very important message from Fidel McKenna, who says Monaghan for Sam. Go on. Carry on.
Yeah, Jesus, okay. It's like, how do you follow that? No, but forget my train of thought, but yeah, that there was a right-wing rump, and an element, and the driving force behind Brexit, I believe, was to remove the British from any means of human rights accountability in any way. But that being said, you look at the numbers in the Labour Party, you look at the numbers within other left-wing groups within Britain that have voted for Brexit and publicly declared so, including some trade unions and other organisations. It was on the basis of the trajectory that Europe is on, and it isn't a good trajectory. And a lot of what we do in our fight is to hold back the seemingly unstoppable tide, and PESCO is a part of it, and more fiscal centralisation is another part of it. But the fight on the left can't be lost in this federalist bubble. It has to be maintained on the basis of subsidiarity, representative rights.
Well, this is because going back to Leo, but also following on from what Dáire said, a lot of us, if we had Towards the United Ireland mug with a cup of tea in front of us, would have spat out RT when Leo talked about neutrality and PESCO in the same sentence. There is a big challenge in terms of, because we still have the situation where people aren't aware of PESCO, and to me it has been the defining move that the government have made. And going back to the Brexit and the post-Brexit scenario and how Europe has responded to it, they're responding with, and there's lots of comments already in about PESCO in particular, because people are hungry for information. Because somebody says, does anybody seriously believe that Irish troops will be involved in a European army? It's about more than that, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. And
about money.
It's about money. It's about propping up the arms industry of the big countries. It's about proxy wars in North Africa. So it is about so much more. But look, I think like the idea that somehow PESCO and neutrality can square up, they can't. Do you know what I mean? Because even if we are only participating in certain projects which are not seen as being sort of more aggressive or more militaristic, we are freeing up other countries to fight in those campaigns, and particularly around North Africa and the Middle East.
And we're damaging our own reputation as a neutral by being associated.
And our own reputation as being a neutral country has actually kind of made us safer and more secure. And that's the irony when Leo was talking about the shared cooperation and this will make Ireland more safe. It's like, no, it won't. It'll actually damage our reputation internationally as being a neutral country. But I think the fact that they rushed it through before Christmas and without a proper debate, I mean, they had to be forced to have any debate at all, and I think they increased it about three hours. The vast majority of Irish people are not even aware of what PESCO is.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, Michael. Did the people on the streets of Waterford, are they talking about PESCO yet?
No, because it was thrown on people. The Irish government didn't have an obligation. They created the obligation to sign up to that. So I don't know. But
this is why PESCO is different than a lot of the other EU institutions that we've been dragged into or protocols that we've been signed up to, because an Irish government can actually sign to leave PESCO. So that means if we campaign enough and if we can make this an election issue, we can actually formulate a debate around what type of Europe we can have, and we can actually secure a government being elected on the basis of withdrawal from PESCO.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, you wouldn't expect anything else from Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, but the Independent Alliance were there in the background. There was two prominent
John
members.
Halligan.
He didn't turn up for the vote, but you had.
He was in North Korea probably at the time.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Halligan, Shane Ross wanted to go off to North Korea and sort out peace missions and God knows what, and then on the other side of it, they're signing us up to a military union in Europe. So.
You know,
what ward are you running for in the local elections?
I'm not running for any ward in any elections.
Oh, that's
he's going for the general.
David Cullinan, watch your back. This man's after your seat.
But
I'm just,
just another important point about PESCO, which again, what we're saying, like most people, as I said, on the streets of Ireland do not know what PESCO is. I mean, but it's a permanent military cooperation. It's a war alliance, as I like to call it. But the fact that Leo, even today, confirmed what we've been saying is that this is going to mean more budgetary expenditure on the military. 2% of GDP is the goal to where we're going to get to. Ireland has the lowest expenditure on it. We have serious problems around paying conditions for our soldiers and our naval officers, but this money, this 2% expenditure that they're going to aim to get there, is not going to be spent on improving their wages and living conditions. You're talking about an armament. And I think the Irish people, if they knew that, if we had had the proper debate, which something so big deserved, they would be marching on the streets now to say this is not in our name.
And you see, when you talk just the finances of it, because, again, and we didn't hear so much of it today. I think even most people in Europe now, the European leaders, because when we first came over here, they were talking about the success story that Ireland was in terms of the model for austerity. I think they're actually even hearing the stories now of our health crisis and our housing crisis and the public services deficiencies that are there, because Leo didn't try and pretend, as he has in the past, that Ireland is this success story, because Ireland actually is advertisement for the failures of austerity policies, because we now have all this GDP growth effectively, and yet we have thousands of families, and not only those people who are on housing lists, but and sleeping on the streets, but more, I suppose, obvious to those people who are who are coming into our offices. You have people who in any other generation would have been able to buy their own house and now can't even rent a place, which is bizarre.
No. But and just on PESCO, as sort of to round it up, like PESCO probably has to be the line in the sand for the movement in support of Irish neutrality, the massive movement that exists there across party. And it's to do with reputation protection of our soldiers in the future in peacekeeping missions, and as well as a financial thing. But we've seen consistently over the course of the last decade, since Shannon, we've seen with Lisbon, we've seen with the new Curragh training camp that will be used to train non-Irish soldiers, non-neutral soldiers. We've seen with the white paper, we've seen with Operation Sophia, we've seen with the intervention to allow French troops to go to Mali, and we've seen with PESCO that over the course of the last 12, 13, 14 years, successive Irish governments have just chipped away at neutrality and moved towards a more conventional, militarily aggressive point of view. And it will have direct ramifications for our well sort of reputed peacekeepers, because if you're associated with the Libyan Coast Guard, who are riddling refugees off the coast of the Mediterranean, if you're associated with NATO and everything that comes with that, or the aggressive post-colonial powers of Britain, Germany, France,
it's the reputational damage.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are asking how they can get their hands on it towards a United Ireland mug. Well, the best way is to hit share and make sure all your friends see this, and then we'll put you in the draw next week. I also have a message here from my wife's Facebook account that says, "Hi Dad." So obviously some of the kids they obviously were misbehaving today and their mother's punishing them, but if Sean, Mairead, Aoife, Niamh or Emer are watching, how are you? And get ready for bed, because you're going now in the next 10 minutes, no doubt. And somebody wants to know what socks Leo is wearing today. Lynn, I know you had took a private moment with him. Did you get down to his socks?
I didn't know. I never noticed the
actually
socks.
show
No,
us
I think
socks.
they probably were blue with gold stars.
Very good. Okay, for this segment we have 5 solicitors on standby because we've had a couple of questions who want to talk about the appointment of Stephen Ray. Is he the group editor or just the editor of the Irish?
The editor-in-chief of Independent News and Media.
Independent News and Media, which in any other society would be described as basically a political rag, but unfortunately is taken seriously in some quarters in Ireland. But this guy has been appointed to an advisory committee on fake news. Lynn.
An expert group, so I suppose he does have
Well,
expertise in
yeah,
fake news.
It's
Possibly as a case study, no?
if you're managing a forest park and you're trying to eliminate poaching, then the best person to have on board is a poacher. So what are we doing to stop it?
Okay, so
maybe give the background.
Yeah,
how did this happen? Because people
there is an issue around fake news, and it's one of these words that's being trumped out literally by Trump, but being thrown about now. In some cases, it's that people are genuinely fed up with
one of our solicitors, I'm told, is after fainting. So.
with a lack of balance and a lack of objectivity in mainstream media, and they're trying to find news from other sources, and that can be problematic if it's deliberately putting out lies there. So the EU has set up this expert group on fake news to try and tackle it, and how do you go about it. But bizarrely, Stephen Ray, who was an open call for applications, threw his name in the hat and managed to get...
you can imagine him probably having a couple of beers on the internet. Oh, there's I'll apply for
application
that.
And has got himself appointed to this expert group. So on Monday I raised it in the European Parliament. I suppose calling out Commissioner Gabriel, the Bulgarian commissioner who's set up this group, literally just saying to her, look, your talk about the damage that fake news is doing, what about the damage that Stephen Ray has done during his time as editor-in-chief? And I gave examples of that. I mean, and one of the big stories, I suppose, that's been linked to it, of course, was the sacking of Gemma O'Doherty, who was covering the penalty points crisis. Eventually got the apology in the courts, rightly. She's an award-winning journalist and was sacked for the fact that she pursued the penalty points crisis. And you only have to look at Ireland now, a few years later, look at the penalty points and the whistleblowers and all of that. And also
nearly brought down the government if Fianna Fáil had a backbone.
It would have brought down the government.
But
I mean, we've had 2 ministers are gone, 2 commissioners are gone, and the Independent News and Media were part of the smear campaign against Garda McCabe. I mean, they ran the stories covering this horrible accusation that was made against him.
But they're also
trying to expose.
you see, fake news and propaganda can work both ways. So you have people who try to destabilise societies, and you have and in some way very negative. But it can also be a mechanism to just maintain the status quo, no matter how ugly. And the truth of the matter is that independent newspapers, not just Stephen Ray, but it has been a vehicle by the establishment to to basically hammer anybody who has an alternative message, a voice, anybody who wants to articulate any change. Now, naturally, Sinn Féin are at the forefront of articulating the need for that change. So we're actually at the forefront of the independence agenda in terms of a political bias. You have a subscription to the Irish Independent, I understand?
I certainly do, Matt. I like to keep an eye on them just to make sure that they're not spreading fake news.
Yeah.
But given the power of mass establishment media organisations and these 38 experts that they're appointing, like over here, that are coming from this industry as it is, and you'd wonder what their motivation is if the smaller media organisations out there that they have power and authority to try and control. Well,
and like part of the problem, as I'm saying, the reason why people are seeking sources of information from alternative sources is because they don't trust
mainstream media.
And that's why you need to have people on this expert group who understand that, and also that combating fake news is not just about fact checking. That's really important.
So, is there a chance we can get Stephen Ray removed, or is it is it just
go in?
Well, I am doing my best. No, in all seriousness, Is
there a chance we could get Gemma O'Doherty on it as well? That'd be good crack.
Well, what we're doing is we are writing to Commissioner Gabrielle. We are sending her that letter this week, and we're sending her a dossier as well as to why we do not think that Stephen Ray is the right person to be sitting on this expert group. It's quite a substantial dossier. We might need a box.
Okay.
As opposed to an envelope. But no, we are challenging it because it is important that you stand up to this. And I mean, it is like I have the absolute respect for journalists and the job they do. There are so many really, really good journalists out there.
And it's a hard job now because newspapers have been pared down to, like we know over here, journalists don't get to come over, even those who would like to cover the Parliament more. Just the budget isn't there within the newsrooms.
They're on short-term contracts, they're on precarious working conditions, and that leaves them wide open to harassment as well and bullying because of that, because they're afraid that their contract can just be cut.
Yeah.
So we do have a huge problem in the media, but the way we fix it is by supporting those journalists who are doing a really, really good job and investing in that investigative journalism.
And not being afraid to call out those who are clearly just operating on a political agenda.
Particularly,
it's always interesting when you look at the journalists who get appointed to senior government positions and look at what their positions were, what stories it was that they were running with. And I'm not going to start naming names because we don't want the second solicitor to. So listen, we're running out of time, and I did want to get talking about just the whole issue of the Kerry babies, because that was in our childhoods, but and you just have a recollection of it, but reading it at the time, like, it was absolutely scandalous how the Hayes family were treated, Joanne in particular. What is this simply now a historic issue that we're now looking back on and grateful that an apology has been issued, or are there still lessons to be learned?
Well, I think the state has improved in its stance towards women, but we're not there yet by any means. I mean, the referendum that hopefully will come this year will go another step in recognising the fact that women need to be respected and trusted, do you know what I mean, with what's happening with their own bodies. But I think the Kerry babies is such a horrific story. But what we have is we still have a situation where the Gardaí, there are huge problems within it. And as we're saying about the penalty points and about whistleblowers, and the way that a family could be, I suppose, convinced to admit to murdering a baby.
There's something rotten
There's something rotten at the core.
Yeah.
And them saying that it was the intimidation. But the fact that even that one of those guards has continued to be allowed to go on public media and to sort of...
As an expert,
and to peddle this story, this magical fantasy story, which is so horrific.
There's another case in Waterford as well, Bill Keneally, paedophile, and there are serious allegations there of a historic cover-up.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we will come back to, because it's one of these issues that simply isn't going away, and the reason they're not going away is because we don't have the fundamental reform that the Garda Síochána need, and we have.
And can I just on that mention, just when we're talking about the Kerry babies and situation and the way the women were treated, calling for people to campaign to save the building in Dublin, the Magdalen Laundry. and to protect it as a sort of
Just
a museum,
a reminder.
of
But it's
how we
important to
treated
say that
women
when
in the
people
past.
look at these cases, that they're aware that these are, in many cases, not in terms of Garda malpractice. It still happens. We've been raising the case of Shane O'Farrell from my own town in Carrickmacross, who was killed in a hit and run by a guy who, by any measure, over the period of hours, days, weeks, months or years, should have been locked up or not even in the country, and that family have met nothing, only brick walls whenever they've tried to get answers, and we'll continue to work on that. Just a few things that are upcoming that you should be keeping an eye on. The special Ardèche will be electing our new president in a few weeks' time. Anybody can come along. You have to register, I think, on the Sinn Féin website or contact Michael Doyle and he'll sort you out. Are you looking forward to that, Lynn?
I am indeed, yeah,
Dáire?
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Word is you're considering your options?
I have 9 common, one
One left. If there's a couple ready to nominate Dáire, we'll have a contest in our hands.
No, just to clarify, yeah, wait, 100% behind Mary Lou on that one. Yeah.
Look out.
I'm behind Matt.
Yeah, very good, very good. Listen, many of you that I chair the United Ireland project team within Sinn Féin, so we have 2 really big events coming up on the 24th of February in the rebel city of Cork, City Hall. We're going to have another, what we expect to be huge event that we'll be discussing with people of all different views, the prospects of a United Ireland, the likelihood of it, but more importantly from our point of view, what exactly a United Ireland will look like. An invitation has been extended to Micheál Martin. He's refused to attend on a number of occasions before. Well, Micheál, we're actually moving right down to your next door, so you're welcome to come along. And then, very interestingly, on the 24th of March, we're having our next in our series of Towards the United Ireland conferences in London, in the TUC Centre in London. So if you know anybody in England or Scotland or Wales, anybody who can hop on a train, tell them to get to London, because that's going to bring a whole new dimension to the debate. Just before we finish up, I want to thank everybody who considered the appeal that we made on the last Facebook Live event and sponsored me for the Christmas Day swim in aid of Shane McMahon, who's suffering from motor neuron disease, a terrible condition. Myself and 250 people. It was a huge crowd, and another probably 1,000 people turned up at Creevy Lake on Christmas Day, and we've raised a good few pounds, probably never enough, and the truth of the matter is that all the money in the world won't
can't heal your eyes from seeing Matt topless on Christmas Day.
So listen, thanks for that, and also just continued best wishes to Joe Riley. If you haven't had a chance yet, go through my Facebook page. There's an audio clip that Joe did with the local radio station LMFM. It just epitomises, in my view, everything that's great about Sinn Féin. Any final words of wisdom, Lynn, as we get ready to leave Strasbourg?
Oh God, no! Just get out.
Get out on the streets. Campaign. We have to free Ireland. We have to get a better Europe. Dáire, thanks a million for coming along. It was painless enough, wasn't it?
Relatively so, yeah.
Yeah, and
I'll be back now.
Michael, any regrets about leaving us? About just abandoning Leo Varadkar?
Never have regrets, just au revoir.
Okay, listen, thanks very much for tuning in. Keep sharing, keep letting everybody know to watch. This is very important to us. And remember, this isn't the RTE news. We'll see you in a few weeks. I'm going to try and finish off on a little bit of a song.
Give us a song.
No way.
Sing along, folks.
Oh, you should have had a Leo song.
What song would you have gone with, Leo? Would it have to be?
I won't say.
I was about to say something there as well that would have got us in trouble.